Paul Graham says there are two types of startup ideas, and one is better than the other. This is Organic Startup Ideas, an essay by Paul Graham. It's short, it's great, and I'm summing it up. Ready? The best way to come up with startup ideas is to ask yourself the question, what do you wish someone would make for you?
Sure.
Organic startup ideas are those that grow organically out of your life. Steve Wozniak wanted a computer and built one for himself. Turns out other people wanted it too.
When I told my father that someday I was gonna give up a house because a computer costs as much as a house. I was gonna live in an apartment so I could have my own computer. And that was just so lucky. I was gonna build that computer for myself, no matter what. I didn't think, hey, I got a great idea, let's start a company. I didn't think that way at all. I would have done that thing in 1975, whether there was any idea of Apple Computer, a company, anything like that. I would have just done that for myself. And eventually Steve Jobs came into town and he saw it. And he said, let's start a company. But people think, oh my gosh, that was the start of Apple. Steve and I had been selling my designs for 5 years. I mean, we already had our company in spiritual terms.
Apple still relies on this principle today. The iPhone is the phone Steve Jobs wants. This is actually kind of funny now because this essay is from 2010. It later came out that Steve Jobs wanted nothing to do with an iPhone with third-party apps. His own board had to beg Jobs to open Apple's sacred ecosystem to other companies. And now, the App Store literally does $1 trillion in annual sales. But I think this only strengthens Paul Graham's argument in that even geniuses don't always recognize how much other people will value the things that they build for themselves. PG added a note here, and that's what people call him, PG. This suggests a counterweight to his argument. It also predicts areas where Apple will be weak, things Steve Jobs doesn't use, e.g., I doubt he is much into gaming. PG was spot on here. Years later, John Carmack, Doom, said working with Steve Jobs was difficult because at his core, Steve didn't think very highly of games. You might say, Steve Jobs started at Atari.
No, it's still black and white. People want color.
Well, he quit to find spiritual enlightenment in India and experiment with psychedelic drugs, which is neither here nor there. Now for the real irony, which Paul Graham points out. Paul Graham made his fortunes on the second type of startup idea, a startup idea for other people. He launched Via Web, which became Yahoo Store. And if you've seen my other PG video, you know that that was a big deal for the most important Filipino karaoke mall store in the world. Oh, I hated that. No, please don't use that. But my parents' mall store was ahead of its time. It was basically Shopify. PG wrote, we didn't need this software ourselves. We weren't direct marketers. We didn't even know when we started that our users were called direct marketers. Now, this next sentence is flat out wrong if you take it out of context. But we were comparatively old when we started the company, so we'd seen enough to know users would need this type of software. This seems to conflict with everything taught by Paul Graham in that you don't actually know until you build it and get to know your customer. He says they were comparatively old, and what this really means, and a large theme of the essay, is that he already had a wealth of experience to have a good idea of what other people would want. That's the point. If you're Steve Jobs or Paul Graham and you have tons of success already, experience, then you have a better shot at the second type of startup idea, a startup idea for other people. His footnotes add so much value. If I had the talent of just PG's footnotes, I'd tell you what. In retrospect, we should have become direct marketers. If I were doing Via Web again, I'd open our own online store. If we had, we'd have understood users a lot better. I'd encourage anyone starting a startup to become one of its users, however unnatural that seems. Well, you may think, that seems like basic product management. Well, back in 2010, it wasn't. It was unnatural and still is for many product leaders. There is no sharp line between the two types of ideas, but the most successful startups seem to be closer to the Apple type than the Via Web type. He sees more organic idea success, like the Apples and the Googles, than his own success, which says a lot considering he's mentored or been around hundreds, maybe thousands of startups. I would say that PG is a unicorn among unicorns. This paragraph is really good. Organic ideas are generally preferable to the made-up kind, but particularly so when the founders are young. It takes experience to predict what other people will want. The worst ideas that we see at Y Combinator are from young founders making things that they think other people will want. The dangerous keywords here are they think other people will want. Very dangerous. It's hard to comprehend until you have a lot of experience that our assumptions about what other people want are usually way off. Speaking of that, my class on Skillshare just got promoted to staff pick this week. It's called Develop Products People Love. You can sign up for free. We're available, links below. So PG encourages people to look at organic ideas first. What's missing or broken in your daily life? He mentions Facebook and how it was ridiculous that Harvard's Facebook was still a printed book in 2004. There are always great ideas sitting right under our noses. Organic startup ideas usually don't seem like startup ideas at first. Mark Zuckerberg said he wasn't trying to start a company, it was just a project. Now, keep in mind, this was early 2010. Facebook was cool, Zuckerberg was cool, the movie The Social Network hadn't come out yet. You know what? Never mind. I'll give you better examples of organic startup ideas. Dropbox. The founder kept forgetting his USB drive, so he built a file syncing solution, solving his own problem. Stripe. The founders were building a bunch of side projects and got frustrated that it was so hard to integrate payments in apps. They solved that problem. Slack was an internal chat tool for a video game company.
So how do you describe the experience of playing Glitch?
Well, the intention is that the experience is very social.
AWS was Amazon's internal web services, and when they opened it to other companies, it was more profitable than all of Amazon's e-commerce sales combined for many years. Looker, where I worked, Lloyd Tabb, our co-founder, built his own analytics tool at 3 different companies before he said, I think this should be available to everyone, and launched Looker as a company.
So I was a CTO of a bunch of different companies before Looker, and none of the tools actually worked very well that were existing. None of the existing reporting tools could work because latency was the problem. I needed people to be able to look at what was happening right now and make decisions about what's happening right now, and most of the tools at the time were extract and then do analysis, and so it's you get something at the end of the day, but if it happened in the morning, you're doing something bad for the whole day. Mm-hmm. So I ended up building these tools that let groups of people collaborate around data, and I did it once, and then twice, and then 3 times, and I said, well, there's a company here.
The list goes on. PG writes, if these guys had thought they were starting companies, they might have been tempted to do something more serious, and that would have been a mistake. So if you want to come up with organic startup ideas, I'd encourage you to focus more on the idea part and less on the startup part. Just fix things that seem broken, regardless of whether it seems like the problem is important enough to build a company on. If you keep pursuing such threads, it would be hard not to end up making something of value to a lot of people. And when you do, surprise, you've got a company. Just drooled on me, man. Don't be discouraged if what you produce initially is something other people dismiss as a toy. In fact, that's a good sign. At this point, when someone comes to us with something that users like, but that we could envision forum trolls dismissing as a toy, it makes us especially likely to invest.
People forget. Take any giant company in the world. Nothing large started large. They always started small. It started with a few people, one or a few people, and many times they were making something that looked like a toy. It looked like a hobby. We thought it was going to be a way for 3 people, one weekend, to stay in our apartment, sleep on some airbeds, pay us money. We'd have a cool weekend adventure. We'd go about our lives. We pulled the airbeds out of the closet and we called it airbedandbreakfast.com. Now I can assure you, we did not think Airbed and Breakfast would be a company where 3-4 million people a night would use. And the funny thing is, we thought it would pay the rent while Joe and I at the time, thought of the big idea. We kept talking about the big idea. And Airbed and Breakfast was just a way to keep solving our own problem, paying rent, before we came up with the big idea. These things all start as unprestigious toys that seem hacked together, and they're only made for you and your friends. That's almost always how it starts.
He talks about why young people have an advantage with organic ideas because they're the ones that are using all this emerging and half-baked technology. There's nothing more valuable than an unmet need that is just becoming fixable. If you find something broken and you can fix it for a lot of people, you've found a gold mine. As with an actual gold mine, you still have to work hard to get the gold out, but at least you know where the seam is, and that's the hard part. You've got this. Comment below if you want me to muck up another beautiful Paul Graham essay with my commentary.